Greetings from Sydney. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're on here in Sydney, the Gadigal, and of the Eora Nation, and pay respect to their elders past and present. We're just going to give a quick presentation from our team, a section of our team. So there's myself, Jackie Reid, Rebecca Jones, and Brenden Shirley, Brenden is our most recent member to join our team and comes from the National Army Museum in New Zealand and has worked extensively with Vernon there. Just to break down what we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some of the stats from the browser over the last 12 months. Jackie's going to talk about our highlights and our stories sections of the browser and our website. Rebecca's going to talk about some of the issues and the process and user response. And Brenden is going to talk about some of the impressions of a new user of the browser. Just some background in terms of the stats. We've got about 8,500 objects in our collection. And the browser went live last August, the 5th of August, with 4,500 records, and 1,000 of those had images attached. We now have a bit over 6,000 records, and the work that Rebecca and Jackie have put in, the hard yards of getting that information up is just extraordinary. And as Ruth said, we all love it too, and the reactions that we get from people, have been excellent as well. So one of the main things that has helped us is that it's with 8,000 odd objects, the access to the collection has just increased astronomically, being able to have it on the browser. The Google Analytics has been a valuable, part of the browser. We have a board of trustees, which is made up of ministers and shadow ministers and heads of various government departments, etc., that meet every quarter. I have to prepare a report on our curatorial and collections area for each of those meetings and present that, talk to the paper at the meetings, and so every quarter we're able to gather a set of statistics about the browser use as well. So I haven't put this in a graphic form. We've just got this table that you can see, but we started with, there was a bit over 2,000 views last August. And by the end of the financial year, roughly, there'd been 16,000 views. It's up to about 19,000, over 19,000 now. The active users have also gradually increased over time. The number of new users keeps growing as well. And of course, our viewable records increases over time as well. That's really all I've got to say. It's been such a great thing for our collection and our visitors to the memorial, and visitors online. So I hand over to Jackie, who's going to talk a bit more about the highlights section that she takes carriage of on the browser.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michael. I wanted to speak about the highlights section today. Obviously, with the main push to try and just get our records online, we haven't created as many as what we would like to, but it's definitely a work in progress. So at the moment, we do have five highlights. These are sometimes just significant collections. We have recent acquisitions and a couple of anniversary specific ones. So the Gallipoli 110 years on, for instance, was a highlight that we made to support Anzac Day this year. Even though these are kind of date specific in some instances, we do treat them as evergreen, partially because it would mean kind of having to delete these subject or themed highlights. But knowing now that we've got the new feature coming in to kind of temporarily hide them is really great. So we do use these highlights as we would a temporary showcase or kind of a temporary exhibition. So that's kind of our approach to them. So there is kind of potential for us in the future to do some more thematic or subject-based highlights, for instance, the prisoners of war. And we're just kind of talking about potentially doing a Christmas highlight for this year, which would be great again to temporarily hide that too. Here's just, also we did a publication to mark the 90th anniversary of the dedication of the Anzac Memorial last year. And so this is a highlight that we did in support of that publication. So it was 90 objects. We haven't included all 90 objects. But we've done we have included them, but we've also done some other subparts to the collections that were featured in the book, because it's kind of a more comprehensive view of what we've got relating to those stories as well. So this is just an example of what our highlights kind of tend to look like. For the Treasures publication, the 90th anniversary publication, we were lucky enough to have professional photography in all of the instances of the objects that we wanted to feature. That's not always the case. So that's just another view of some of the content that we had on that highlight. So we've obviously tried to include all the different object types as much as we can in these highlights too. So the other part I wanted to talk about is how we've used the browser to support our other website content, particularly our stories that we publish online. These are just kind of short articles that talk about largely object provenance, but also kind of anniversaries and battles and things that we want to commemorate here at the Anzac Memorial. So because the browser allows the document links and URL links, we've been able to actually provide a browser link in the Our Stories page that will put people onto the browser to actually view the objects as they appear there, and vice versa. So as you can see, this is the James Smith in our collection, that link on the right-hand side in the last one. When you click that, that takes you to his collection as it appears on the browser, which is really great. And that's it from me. So I will pass on to Rebecca.
Hey everybody, we all get to chat at the Anzac Memorial, the Yak. So I'm part of the collections team working very closely with Vernon here, and I was just going to quickly say, some of you would have heard this before when we've spoken previously, but since 2016 the Memorial has had a growing team of staff. So when Michael came on back then, there was only 2 full-time staff, and now we've got not quite 4.5 full-time staff members in this team. So the capacity of the staff to develop the collection and its management has grown greatly across time, and the capacity to develop the functionality of Vernon continues to grow as a consequence of that, which is where the browser came in for us. In preparation for the browser going live, we spent many months reviewing the data, ensuring that it was as sound as possible. And we're pleased to say that goal has been achieved, but it remains warts and all. So always listening to how other institutions approach what they release or share online, and the different attitudes that people kind of bring to that process. We're very much, it's kind of out there. It might not have an image. It might not have measurements, but we're pleased to just be sharing the collection that we do have, and people can access it and then get in touch with us if they want to retrieve more information. But we're always working to increase the standards. Even with all of that work done, we continue to alter our thinking about our data and how visitors to the site will interact with it, and is the data meaningful to them. So I've spoken previously at Vernon sessions about how we had to shift from a very inward-facing thinking about the data that went into Vernon to now being very much far broader and outward facing for our undefinable audience. We just don't know exactly who's going to be out there looking at this. So we have to think about a very broad range of users. Our use of and reflections of Vernon are very organic, and we are constantly rethinking and developing what Vernon can do for us as it feeds through into the browser and our audience. So, for example, something like the subject theme authority terms category on Vernon is not something we've used very heavily in the past, just 3 years ago even. But now, as we consider our audience and what they may want to search and engage within the collection, the opportunities for this are immeasurable. There are a number of groupings that we can create within this field to allow access into the collection for our users, from identifying animals as a subject within photographs, or even within specific objects, to connecting all the veterans who were imprisoned in a particular POW camp. So when a user comes to the browser and they're thinking, what am I looking for? How do I want to find a way into this collection? We can have, for example, Stalag 18A there as a category for them to click on and see all of our veterans within our collection who may have been housed within that facility. And that similar approach can apply to battalions and units. So they can go and see, oh, well, Grandpa was in, the 2nd, 5th Field Ambulance or whatever it was. They can click on that and see who else in our collection may have been in that unit. We just wanted to mention that we didn't turn on the comments function, and this is not proven to be a problem for us. We just felt we didn't have the staff capacity to deal with any controversial discussion or issues that might have been raised within that space, and that it's important for us to protect our veterans and the storytelling around that. But the public are always welcome and do contact us directly. Before going live, we were concerned that our small team would be inundated with public inquiries, and I wonder if other people wonder about that as well before they kind of share the collection online. But this hasn't been the case. It's been quite manageable. And so, I mean, we've always had those public inquiries, but there's the odd one comes through. What we don't know is if someone contacts us and says, oh, I notice you have A, B, and C, we don't know if that's come through. They saw it on social media, or they saw it on the browser, or they saw it, in an exhibition, or even a TV news article about us. It's something that it's good to have there for people to reach out to us. So I'm going to hand over to Brenden and just finish by saying that just as the collection's organic and constantly changing, Vernon and the browser continue to develop and change here at the Memorial.
All right. Well, kia ora from me. I'm obviously, as Michael mentioned, the most recent member of the team. I've arrived in March of 2025, so the browser had been active for about 6 months by that stage. So I'm probably the only one who sort of has come in with that sort of mindset from the get-go, which has been quite sort of interesting. And I suppose I'll start by sort of saying that in my previous job at the National Army Museum in Waiouru, they had Vernon quite early on, so I think they got it in the mid-90s. But because it's like located within the New Zealand Defence Force system and behind security firewalls and all that sort of thing, it's been quite limited in how they could sort of like present the information. And so they don't have any real sort of form of collections online. And the way that they sort of engage with the public has been through social media posts, articles published on the websites. So it'd be more sort of like, if you wanted to post a story, you'd have to sort of create it as an article or something by the curators as scratch. So Vernon, the way they've been using it has been very sort of, as Rebecca mentioned, very sort of internally faced as a resource for the staff, both for collection management and also for exhibition development, but with no sort of requirement to have a general public sort of perspective. And so I suppose that's been the real sort of big change for me sort of coming into it, with the browser having been instigated. There's a few sort of fields that, as we've already sort of talked about, need to be a bit sort of checked, because if they're being shared online, we don't want to put certain content, say, for example, if a item hasn't been located yet, and we don't want to have in the title field or the brief description, item not located, we want to have a little bit more of the institutional integrity. So it's just sort of checking those sort of fields that they are in a form that's clear and consistent with what we want to put in there. Another thing which I haven't really had too much experience with, which is a larger sort of thing here at the Memorial, and particularly in Australian museums, is the statement of significance, which we didn't, not to that same extent, we don't really use in New Zealand. So, but the sort of interesting thing with having those, which is obviously one of the fields that we share on the browser, is that historically they've been copied straight from the original acquisition proposal, which is great, and then it's got the content there. But sort of the information that's produced in that is more for our own sort of internal sort of why there's these gaps in the collection that we need to sort of fill in, sort of the justification, thank you, yes, of why we're bringing it into the collection, which isn't really relevant to the general public and what they want to know. They want to know who this person is, what the sort of the provenance is, and the relevance to the museum and to New South Wales. So some of that needs to be a bit more sort of rejigged and reformatted as we go forward with that in that field, so that it's a more of a summary, because that's quite often the main section that the public will look at. And obviously the other thing is, because it's been, as Rebecca mentioned, a very sort of small staff over the last 9 years, and it's constantly sort of grown, due to staffing sort of numbers, a lot of the records are still quite sort of skeleton records, and simply due to either the lack of paperwork and stuff, it's only really been entered into the title field, and that's where all the information goes, without anything in brief description or provenance or other fields such as that. And so quite often they need to be sort of redistributed out into all the different fields, so that we don't have blank spaces when we get published online. So yeah, it's sort of a combination of those sorts of considerations that's something that I've sort of picked up on. And my sort of main project here has been to take a section of the collection, the 600, any accession number starting with 600, and sort of going back through the original paperwork, fleshing them out, photographing them, and getting them up to speed. And then as we go, sort of then publishing them online and getting them more greater numbers and more relevant and clear content.